Additional funding will be invested in the development of Australia's teaching workforce, as well as addressing the shortage of maths and science teachers. We will also use this nation's mineral wealth to better fund Australia's university and TAFE community. And I'll have a look at a proposal by Malcolm Fraser to again look at the Universities Commission option to advise government so that universities, which are somewhat duchessed by the current politic in Australia, are not just reliant on overseas students' income for their future, but this nation bears its responsibility to adequately fund tertiary education in Australia. Additional funding will be invested. Sorry, I'll go on to the next bit. Ladies and gentlemen, the high-speed rail saga showed the real value of the Greens in Australian politics. How about this one? When I moved for a national study into high-speed rail in the Senate a few months back, Labor and the Coalition voted no. The Coalition branded the study a waste of people's money. That was Senator McDonald from Queensland. Senator Humphries from the ACT missed the vote. We Greens persisted, and now in the middle of this campaign, Labor, seeing how popular the project is, has switched to yes. Remarkably, the Coalition too has switched to yes. Australia, that's for a study into high-speed rail. Australia will get high-speed rail, carrying millions of people between our big cities, and why not? China and France have trains now that have been clocked at more than 500 kilometres an hour. Saudi Arabia is getting it. Spain has committed 56 billion euros to augment the current system between Madrid and Valencia and Barcelona. Argentina's getting it. The US is going for it. Japan's had it since 1964. There's going to be high-speed rail between London and Birmingham. You know about the French system. And here in Australia, we're getting a catch-up caused by an election campaign and the huge popularity from the Australian people. And we Greens are committed to seeing that this country, with its totally beautiful configuration for high-speed rail, is not left behind. While public transport languishes, both major parties will pour hundreds of millions into new rail track and rail facilities for guess what? Coal. For an industry 75% owned overseas. Labor and the Coalition are putting coal before people and selling out Australia's future in not only the public transport, but in climate change and our looming potential of climate change to severely damage this country's economy. Whether we get high-speed rail rather than more coal trains, ladies and gentlemen, depends on whether people vote Greens on Saturday in the Senate. I will come back to the double peril, however, involving the Senate in a moment. First, I want to remind you of some of the other policies the Greens are putting before the Australian people. You may have missed them for very good reason. Too much of the news pages have been full of too much piffle for them to be covered. Well, let me get to those policies. The Greens will end discrimination in the marriage laws of Australia. This issue is rankling out there. Young Australians are in revolt. It's been raised with me all round this country, and we have both the other leaders saying never no. Well, the Greens say yes, and it can't be too soon. Ladies and gentlemen, the Greens will accord with international law and give asylum seekers the respect and compassion they deserve in Australia, in an election where the dire prediction of a tsunami of boat people has simply failed to materialise. The Greens will roll out the remainder of the $16 billion schools building program. We got that through the Senate as part of the Rudd-Swan $43 billion stimulus package. The Coalition opposed the package. They said no again. But that package saved Australia from recession. Tony Abbott now threatens this school funding program if voted into office next week. That threatens projects in both the private school and the public school sector in Australia. For that reason, on Saturday, Australians should vote Green. Against Tony Abbott's opposition, to ensure that thousands of Australia's public schools, as well as independent schools which benefit from the schools program, will be augmented by the rest of the schools left out getting the same benefits in the next triennium. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll work with the next government for a triple referendum to recognise Indigenous Australians in the Constitution, to acknowledge local government in the Constitution, and for a new vote on Australia becoming a republic, and that exciting prospect of us Australians having an Australian as our head of state. The Greens propose a Murray-Darling Management Commission with teeth, able to make sure those urgent measures to save the nation's greatest river system will be implemented. We advocate a national register of the foreign ownership of farmlands and of water rights. We will legislate for truth in political advertising. Both the big parties voted that down earlier this year. Our policy is to extend the nation's marine reserve system, including the Coral Sea, to guarantee the future of Australia's fishing and marine ecosystems. If people want to protect the right of their children and their grandchildren to be able to go fishing, forget the Fishers Party, with their all-out me now attitude, go for the Greens, with intergenerational equity and an assurance that those nurseries, which are important for the future of fisheries in this country, are protected. We'll meet the aspiration of over 80% of Australian voters to end the needless destruction of Australia's remaining wild forests and woodlands and their wildlife. Christine Milne, ladies and gentlemen, has announced our $5 billion National Loans Guarantee Fund for the first-of-kind renewable energy projects like baseload solar, wind, geothermal and ocean power. We would also extend Rachel Seawart's amendment to the workplace relations laws, which entitles parents of preschool children and children with a disability to have flexible work hours. The Greens will work for flexible work hours for all carers. Carers deserve such a break. After all, they contribute $30 billion to this nation's economy. One topic is not up for debate for the old parties. That's Afghanistan. Australians may be divided on the deployment of our troops, though most Australians want our troops brought safely home. All Australians support and honour the courage and commitment of the brave 1,600 now in the service of our country in Afghanistan. We should honour them further by debating their deployment in Afghanistan in our parliament. The Parliament of the Netherlands did, to the extent of forcing an election, and as a result, the Dutch contingent is now on the way home. I will pursue a debate on Afghanistan in the new parliament so that every elected MP contributes for once, says what she or he is being fed back from our electorates. When Parliament resumes, we will see that we have a debate on this issue to honour our Defence Force personnel and the nation. The Greens back Labor's national broadband network, ladies and gentlemen, which can deliver dedicated broadband speeds of 1,000 megabits per second to 93% of the Australian population. The Coalition, on the other hand, can only promise that some 93% of their broadband speeds will be no worse than a peak speed of 12 megabits a second. I put on record here that the Greens will also move in the next parliament to ensure that the NBN cannot be privatised without a future Act of Parliament.